What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So a heads up, tomorrow there won't be a Newswave at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I feel like many people waking up well after that with a headache. Probably the last thing they need is seeing a waving PlayStation 3 background in front of them while someone yells at them about gaming news. So we'll be back, of course, to go over anything that we may have missed, which actually today we do have some stuff to go over ahead of the new year, which does include another alleged Switch 2 picture that's shown up online that many of you tagged me in, as well as a certain feature for the device that's been called out. We also have Nvidia with some leaked numbers for pricing potentially for their upcoming video card announcement that should be at CES, and this caused quite a stir online. And then Sony continues to talk about their live service ambitions and how Concord doesn't seem to have deterred them. In fact, they continue to double down on that. We'll go over all of that though here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Sega and Jet Set Radio, which was announced as part of like this package of Sega games, older IPs that they were going to revive throughout the next 5 or 6 years or something. They have an entire like internal roadmap for this that's working up to their super game that we're still trying to figure out exactly what that is, but 4Gamer went around to all these different companies, gaming studios and stuff, asking them about their ambitions for 2025, and one of them was Sega, and actually a producer who's working currently on the new Jet Set Radio title. We can see this though posted up. This is translated through Google, where when asked about goals for 2025, Masayoshi, again a producer at Sega, says, "I'm still working on a new Jet Set Radio game. Incidentally, 2025 marks the 25th anniversary of Jet Set Radio, so I'm thinking about how to celebrate it." And I mean, merchandise seems like the obvious thing here, but also could they maybe port over just the Dreamcast Jet Set Radio, or Jet Grind Radio as we know about it here in the US. I know whenever we talk about Jet Set Radio, whether it's the one on the Dreamcast or future on the Xbox, comes down to licensing and music stuff. So that's something I guess they'd have to work out whether they actually remove it from the game or figure out any of the deals or re-upping stuff to make that a reality. I think that'd be a lot of fun to bring that over though and release it as sort of a way to remind people that the franchise still exists and Sega is still interested in doing more with it, which seems like we're on that crash course potentially. I think maybe 2026 for the new Jet Set Radio game, but it would be cool to have something here to celebrate the 25th anniversary in 2025. Also, it looks like there was a bit of a discovery made with The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask on the Nintendo 64, a certain accessory that the game was going to take advantage of, but didn't. We can see this posted up. This is over on Time Extension. It's recently been discovered that the N64 version contains hidden support for the N64's microphone accessory, and that voice commands exist in the game's code. This is a YouTuber, SKAW or Skawo. They made the discovery, and it's interesting because it seems like it was far enough along to where they, for example, mapped different commands to things in the game, like taking a picture with the picto box by expressing the phrase "say cheese." However, while they are still there in the code, you have to say these different phrases in Japanese. And the only thing I can think of is with this, the reason it didn't make it into the final game, maybe the development time. This game, remember, was made in like a year. It was very, very, very fast. And the other thing, just how poor the reliability was for the microphone with the N64. If you played Hey You Pikachu, you know what I'm talking about. So you basically would have probably broken it down to you just yelling at the microphone and hoping that Link did the correct thing on screen. Oh, and we have a big update for Sonic 3, the movie, of course, that's just released, as it seems like it is cruising along with box office. You can see this is posted up. This is by Lewis, who does follow a lot of the box office reports, saying Sonic the Hedgehog 3 crossed 200 million at global box office, starting staggered overseas rollout, grossing record 74 million opening overseas. So it still has to open in other markets to my understanding, but this is very, very strong for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, of course, Shadow being a big factor of that, because I think the story was really well done there on the big screen. But also it just shows that Sega has like a powerhouse here outside of just gaming with Sonic. It is really cool to see Sonic in this position because, yes, you will introduce the character to the newer generation through these means. Just having it on in the movie theater, having, of course, on streaming services, on Blu-ray, people to maybe watch at home at a movie night for the kids. And it's it's just good to see Sonic continue to be really, really strong here, even just outside of games. As we know, there is another movie, go figure, coming up. If you've seen Sonic 3 and you stayed for the credits, you kind of get an idea as to what the direction is there. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch 2, and I know it's gotten to the point where there's so much we've gone over in the past several years now, but we should be getting to that finish line here soon, hopefully, with Nintendo making its official announcement. But there has been this odd thing that's been happening where someone allegedly has access to the system, and that's Nextgenhandheld. And the reason we followed them is because they actually posted pictures that had caused all kinds of debate online on if it was real or not, or there was AI generation for some of it. And it seems like the determination has been parts of it are correct and are real. Other parts have been obfuscated by AI to hide the identity of the person and where they're working, because as we know with Nintendo, they will find you and they'll take care of things. But we can see this image that was posted, and this was in response to a person who was asking about a photo of the blue and orange Joy-Cons. They did a close-up here of the C button, although to me, this just looks cropped. It looks zoomed in and cropped. Like, they have a larger picture that they have not posted, I assume, at this point, because we've seen them do it before. So they give us a look at the Joy-Con with that C button just below the home button there. And then to the left is something orange. Now, that immediately made people think, wait a minute, is this like this, does the Switch 2 have like orange accents or something? Well, the belief right now is that it has like the wrist strap part that you would slide onto the side. So if somebody wants to do even like the two Joy-Con play where you hand off a Joy-Con, it has the extra button presses at the top. Maybe those are accented with the gray Joy-Cons to where orange and maybe blue is the other one. So that's the potential zoom in and crop that we're seeing right now. But the other part actually has to do with I think a pretty big feature, and one that we've already heard. And that's why I see Nextgenhandheld and I go, okay, how much do they actually know? How much are they kind of LARPing about this? But they say I opened the kickstand and found micro SD Express engraved. We already were expecting this. This has been discussed for, I think at the beginning of this year. Samsung announced this. We heard from SanDisk that they were going to launch their own micro SD Express cards. And because of that, it lines up with Nintendo and the Switch 2, which, I mean, we've seen the current Switch run almost 8 years now, and it's going to, because unless the Switch 2 does come out by March 3rd, the Switch will still be the primary system for Nintendo 8 years in. So with that in mind, you have to look that far into the future for this system, and the SD Express setup makes a ton of sense for Nintendo when it comes to eliminating load time. So this, along with, there's like a job listing that was discovered within Nintendo for looking into micro SD card Express, and again, all the pieces fit together. So when I hear that, and I look at my Switch OLED, you open it up, it does say micro SD right where the card goes, just to signify that's what the slot's for. Sure, it all fits together, but it's also very, very easy to kind of look at that and say, this makes sense. I can throw this out there and people will probably pick it up and go, yeah, that's obvious. But if you're curious about pricing for micro SD Express, and again, this is something I expect for Nintendo to be using, you can see this. SanDisk has it listed now, and it's actually not terrible. Like, so for example, a 128 gigabyte card is $45. A 256 gigabyte card is $60. Yes, this is a good bit more expensive, something like double the amount that we pay currently for SD cards of these size at the slower speeds. Keep in mind though, these cards are, as SanDisk says, up to 880 megabytes per second transfer speeds. That's up to 4.4 times faster read speeds than the fastest micro SD cards. Like, most people currently in their Switch are not using the fastest ones, okay? So that these are significantly faster than what most people have in their Switch now. And the idea, once again, with Nintendo, eliminate load times, and these would fit in perfectly for that, along with, of course, things they would do internally with the Switch to get it there, with the development of like file storage system, compression, that kind of thing. I'm curious how this will work with the card. I assume you would pop it into the system and the device would then run a test similar to what the PS5 does for NVMe, where you have to, if you want to upgrade the storage, you drop it into the system. It'll tell you if it is a correct speed for what it's looking for, and then it will basically green light it and say you're good to go. I assume the same thing would happen here, so that kind of also means most likely the SD cards you have now aren't going to be something you're going to be using in the new Switch at all, really. So I would still wait for Nintendo to make that official announcement. We get more information before you go out and buy one of these. Hey, unless you're like a content creator recording some big time footage, 4K, 8K or something, okay, then maybe you want those transfer speeds. But for people with the Switch currently, you can hold off on these until we get more information. Next up, let's talk about Nvidia, who is expected to make some announcements for new video cards at CES. That's like next week. And it's going to be interesting to see where these cards fall when it comes to performance, features, and of course pricing, because that 4090, when they released it, already incredibly expensive. It's $1,500, right? And then we see the 4080, and that's $1,000. So video cards, which has been very annoying, has been going the wrong way. I would love to see these companies really hone in on that more budget-oriented pricing and try to figure out ways to deliver things like 1440p on a budget. We see some cards trying to do this, but it's not quite there yet. However, the 5090 and the 5080 are expected to be announced at CES, and you can see this is posted up. This is over on Tom's Hardware, and they're citing WXNod, who it looks like a retailer seemed to post these on, it's in the Chinese market, and we can see the 5090 and the 5080 here. Now, when you take the 18,999 yuan and you convert it over to US dollars, $2,600. Same with the 5080 seems to translate over to $1,350. However, keep in mind, these are prices out of China, and as noted here by Tom's Hardware, it has like a 13% or so tax on top of that. So there is a good chance that I still think the 5090 is going to come in. It sounds crazy to say this, but I think it's going to come in at like $2,000, which, wow, okay. Yeah, and then I think with the 5080, probably about $1,200. So that's still a pretty significant jump. It's a 20% price increase for something like the 5080, which I'll tell you now, the 5090 is going to be, it's going to be unnecessary for 95% of people out there who are looking to play games. Now, there might be some out there who have a bunch of 8K monitors set up and they want to do a big, they want to do a big surround setup, so they need this ridiculous resolution that doesn't even make sense to look at on paper. So, okay, I get that. But most people, even like the 5080 will probably be overkill. The 4080 is overkill for people playing at like 1440. So, still though, I look at this and go, okay, we're not delivering these video card upgrades at the same price points, which can then drive down prices for previous generations. We're just raising that price roof more and more and more. So it sort of leaves that previous generation in place. It'll still get cheaper because they're used and there's depreciation there. But for new cards, and it just unfortunately does not affect the market like back in the day when cards would come out and we wouldn't have incredible jumps of 20 to 30, even 40% in terms of pricing. We would see cards drop off a cliff in terms of their aftermarket price point, and you'd be able to build, I'd say, some pretty good budget rigs. But now it just feels like budget towers for gaming is harder and harder to build. It's just, I'm curious what the 5090 is going to show up with that makes people go, okay, yes, $2,000. I'm going to need to get that one. But I don't know. For me, maybe I'll just keep an eye out for a 4080 that drops down in price a bit if someone really looking to flip it quickly to move it towards that 5080. I have a 3080 Ti and I just haven't felt the need to make any kind of upgrade, but we'll see if Nvidia can work to convince everyone at CES with maybe some interesting features and some big time performance boosts. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their live service ambitions, which continue to roll along despite Concord, which was, I don't know what to say, just a colossal failure. It was launched and then it was gone before Spirit Halloween. That is quite the accomplishment. But we do have Herman Holst talking with Famitsu about their live service plans, and we can see this is posted up through Google's Translate over on their website, where he says, the game business is constantly changing due to various factors, including technological advances, new genres, and ways of playing. However, one thing that remains constant is people's desire for great entertainment experiences, and attention to games continues to grow. However, this has also created competition, and like many companies in the industry, we've had to make changes to our business to solidify a more sustainable operating base. Going forward, we will continue to focus on developing live service titles along with the story-driven single-player titles that our players want. We are learning a lot as we establish the ability to develop high-quality live service titles within SIE. Helldivers 2 attracted many players through continuous content provision and achieved results that support the potential of live service titles. So I know this is something that many Sony fans out there, I see it, trust me, that they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, hey, they're all on board, single player games, look, the live service stuff didn't work out, we're moving on from it. No, they're still developing multiple live service games right now internally. We know about Fair Games. I assume we're going to see more about that game this year coming up. It's also possible that after Concord struggled so much and was pulled down that they maybe revised some of their live service stuff, because they knew Concord was going to be in trouble very quickly. Like, as soon as they, I feel like, showed what it was, they had to start evaluating internally when it came to their other live service games. You're not going to do much about Concord. It's just, there was no saving it, really. But when you look at something like Fair Games, it's possible internally they said, we're going to do this differently or change things up here with the rollout and the introduction of it, and then maybe it'll come out a few months later. We also seem to at least think that right now Bend is working on some sort of military shooter live service game. So that, when I saw it, kind of reminded me a bit of Outriders, the way like the concept art and things were set up, which Outriders was, I think it was a fun game, but it just didn't catch on and didn't work out for People Can Fly. So it's going to come down to, I feel like, Sony learning from some of the stuff that's happened with live service, good and bad. Helldivers 2, and then Concord. I mean, two opposite ends of the spectrum, like extreme opposite ends. So maybe they can land something closer in the middle there with Fair Games, because the heist shooter genre, I think it has a massive void after Payday 3 just completely fell apart. So here's hoping maybe they can land the plane, so to speak, with Fair Games. But based on what I've seen from it so far and the general vibe, I don't have a ton of confidence, but we'll see. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Grand Theft Auto 6, which right now people are sitting on pins and needles waiting for this next big trailer for the game, which we saw how the first trailer did. It's exploded to over 100 million views in no time, and now even more than that. So yeah, the most anticipated game, I think, in history. Probably not a stretch for this one. And it also appears that analysts are very, very confident in how much money this game is going to make, which we can see this posted up. This is over on the Game Post. Says recent projections from analysts at DFC Intelligence suggest that the game will pull in an astonishing $3.2 billion in its first year, with analysts forecasting $1 billion in pre-orders before it even launches. Think about that for a minute. You're a game company like Take-Two, and you know that before you have to deliver the product, you're going to get $1 billion just from people trying to get in the line. We have Osaki here, CEO of IDG Consulting, noted the anticipation around the title, calling it one of the biggest entertainment launches in history, not just in games, but for all of media. And again, that's not surprising here at all. In fact, I think this is one of the easiest games to make these sorts of predictions, because it's going to be very hard to overshoot Grand Theft Auto 6, just a lifetime. Think about how many copies GTA 5 has sold. It's over 200 million at this point. So that, coupled with GTA Online, clearly getting a successor here with Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, the sky is the limit for how much money this game could potentially make in the long run. I am curious how fast they'll make some of this money. I mean, over $3 billion in the first year. Again, this sounds crazy. I think that's undershooting it. I think it might be more than that. So it's, we'll see when the next trailer releases. The first one kind of focused in more on Lucia. So I almost wonder if the next one is going to focus more in on the other protagonist, maybe. But we need to see more about the game clearly. And I'm hoping we get that trailer in January, because people are they are fiending for this trailer. There's so much stuff happening with like conspiracy theories and other things that are really diving into the weeds, to where Rockstar and Take-Two just need to give people something. So here's hoping we're a few weeks away maybe for the next trailer for the game. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. And that is Game of the Year Madness Day 9, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth versus Granblue Fantasy Relink. Look, I know Granblue Fantasy really didn't have much of a shot against Rebirth. I mean, Rebirth was one of the Game of the Year nominations at the Game Awards. It's well known. Still, though, Granblue Fantasy Relink, this is another thing, is I feel like these polls also at least can show off to people some of the games that maybe they missed that are higher quality. And, Granblue Fantasy Relink is one that I have to go back and continue working through. It's one of those situations where there was just so much stuff that had come out around that time. I have the game. I just need to get through it. So that's one that I would like to go back in the backlog here, maybe, we'll see, throughout January. I'm still right now playing Dragon Quest III HD 2D, so there's so many games I'm still trying to catch up on, and then 2025 looks like it's going to start off quickly, especially as we get into February. It's too many games. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Artezi, who says, oh, so now Sony is claiming they do have IPs, when like a month or two ago, they were singing a completely different tune. Yeah, that was Hiroki Totoki, like CEO in general for Sony, right? This was Herman Holst, who says they are looking back at some of their older intellectual properties, which they still have many they can choose from, but I'm sure Hiroki Totoki just wants more. Like, hey, we gotta make more intellectual properties that are only tied to us, because, hey, Spider-Man, I mean, incredibly popular PlayStation game, that's not our IP. We need games like God of War that can sell at the clip that Spider-Man does, because we wholly own it then. So I think that's more or less how he's kind of viewing it, and then also can spin off into movies and streaming for places like Amazon or their own, or that kind of stuff, or anime, as they made a big push there, as we've seen recently. So that's, I think, more or less what Hiroki Totoki's thinking. I still believe they can go back and get some of these older IPs from PlayStation's history. I've cited Sly Cooper multiple times, and that's just because I have the anecdotal evidence in front of me of kids just saying, hey, Sly Cooper looks really cool. We should get another one of those. I would love to play that. And hey, can we play Sly Cooper? Can we check that one out? And then they also love Astrobot. So it seems like they are starting to figure things out with a general audience, and also the younger generation coming up, because that will be important for Sony 10 or 15 years from now. So they might want to get started on some of those older intellectual properties sooner rather than later. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here at a card, or maybe you want to talk a bit more about the Switch 2 logo in the name, as the internet seems to be a bit torn around if that's a good path for Nintendo. I'll leave that down below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.